Good evening. Hello, all you beautiful people. Thank you so much for being here. Lee and I were just talking about how sometimes you never even get a single person show up for a book signing, which is a truly disheartening experience. We know it is hard to go anyplace these days. It is so much easier to just stay home. There's nothing better than canceling plans. It's the greatest feeling in the world. So we are so glad to have you here tonight. I wanted to say one thing actually before we got started. Since this is Los Angeles, most of you out there probably know how hard it is to write or publish just one book. I have to tell you that you are, if you don't know Lee already, you are lucky to see a man here who has created an enormous career and written literally dozens of books, worked on many, many shows, produced movies. So you should know how wildly impressive it is to me and to everyone else that Lee has been at work this long.
You make it sound like it's over. He was at work for so long. His career was great while it lasted.
No. And he's still going strong, even though restraint or possibly good manners would require him to stop and let some younger and perhaps not as hairy writers get their jobs.
I'm seeing my dermatologist tomorrow, Chris. I've got some frightening things going on up here.
Yeah. And I wanted to also let you know that we're here tonight to discuss Fallen Star, his latest novel in the Eve Ronin series, which is about to become a television show starring Madison Lintz, formerly of Bosch.
God willing.
Yeah. The first question I want to ask you, it basically is, you have been writing a long time. You've been doing this for so long. And you were writing, and more importantly, you started selling novels when you were an undergraduate at UCLA. What I wanted to ask you was, how did you find that confidence in your own voice when you were still that young and to enter the marketplace?
I was more confident at 19 than I am right now. I didn't know anything, so it was very easy to be confident. I was fortunate in that I had a journalism professor who was already a best-selling author, so it seemed approachable. My mom was a journalist, my father was a television anchorman, so the world of publishing and television didn't seem out of reach, even though I was going into an area that neither of my parents was into. This opportunity to write books sort of fell in my lap. I think a lot of you have been here before, so I won't tell you the whole story of how I started and for the 15th time. But I sold my first novel when I was 18 years old. By virtue of my journalism professor turning down a project and recommending me for it. So I didn't have a chance to really be afraid of it. I had to grab the opportunity when it landed in my lap.
Right.
And then after that, the movie rights sold and my career kind of took off. The movie never got made. And I worked in television for many years before I got back to writing books. And by the time I was back to writing books, I was very confident as a television writer, not so confident as a novelist. And the reason I got back into writing books was one of my TV episodes got nominated for an Edgar Award, which is like the Oscar of mystery writing. So my agent, who I thought was dead, or at least he was dead to me, called me up and said, Lee, I don't know if you realize what an Edgar Award means, but if you have a book, I can sell it this week. So I was stuck in Vancouver doing a TV show with a star I couldn't stand. So I came up with an idea for a book about the mob bringing their style of doing business to TV. They don't cancel shows, they kill them. And I just sort of vented my frustration with this actor in this show and wrote up a very quick outline and got a 3-book deal from St. Martin's Press. And that got me back into writing books. And I was doing it so fast then that I didn't have a chance to really question whether I was confident in what I was doing. Right. But after that, I won't bore you with all the stories, but I did a lot of television tie-ins. I wrote books based on Diagnosis Murder, a show that I was the executive producer on. I wrote books based on Monk, a show I was writing for. And in those cases, yes, I had a voice, but I was kind of channeling the voice of those shows. And I didn't need to have confidence because those shows were successful and I had written for them and I knew I could write them. The whole question of confidence didn't come till later. Did you ask me also about my voice or just about my confidence?
Your voice, yeah.
My voice. I don't know that I figured out what my voice is until about 10 years ago. I'd written a lot of books. Some were way over the top, some were uneven. And it wasn't until I started writing with Janet Ivanovich she was a good friend of mine. We ended up writing books together. I can go more into that later if you like. But I thought I was a very lean, tight writer. And she would take 3 pages of my really lean, tight writing and reduce it down to 2 paragraphs. And they were 2 paragraphs that I had written.
Right.
And I realized, my God, she's right.
Yeah.
That says it all. And she also taught me a very important lesson, which was, don't call attention to your writing, because it reminds readers they're reading a book. Your authorial voice should be buried. Right. You let your characters speak. Let your characters have these thoughts. If you can't put your witty observation into the mind or dialogue of a character, cut it. So that was a big help to me. And then I started writing my books first as scripts, not with any intention of selling them, but just to get the story out of my system and see if they worked. And applying the 4-act structure and dialogue-driven scenes to my books made me a leaner, better, faster writer. And I would say I didn't really find my voice until a book I wrote called King City. Right before I did Jan Ivanovich books, and then another book called True Fiction right after. And then since then, probably the book where I really found it was Lost Hills, which is available for sale here. But it was the first Eve Ronin book, and probably my biggest success critically and commercially. Mm-hmm. And so it took me a while to find myself as a writer.
That's actually really heartening, because I've been at this for a while and it still feels like stumbling around in the dark sometimes.
But in a way, you're doing that now with the Robert B. Parker books. You have to have your own voice and also emulate Robert B. Parker. That's not too much pressure, is it?
No, of course not. The greatest mystery writer of all time. No, that's fine. Just fill his shoes. You'll be fine. And they don't really hand you like a how-to manual.
No.
You and I both love Parker.
And you're being judged. Every time you write a line there, they're going, is it as good as Robert Parker?
Yeah, I can tell you it's not.
Shh, it's better than Parker.
At
least better than Parker's last 10 years.
If you are planning on buying some of the books, yes, it's amazing. You should totally get 3 or 4 copies and give them to your friends. So that actually leads me to another question I wanted to ask you. Is you are an amazingly prolific author. Like you've done literally dozens of books. How? Just asking for myself.
I am so amused to hear people say how prolific I am. I feel like the laziest writer I know. I mean, I'm sitting in front of my computer watching old 70s cop shows, not getting anything done. I mean, it always feels like I'm lazy and sitting on my ass. I guess I'm not, but I feel that way. I feel like I'm a lazy writer, like I'm not working hard enough. I'm wasting too much time. I think what drives me is I have a very expensive wife. And my mistress, even more expensive. No, I mean, I have always needed to write. I think for me, writing is my way of dealing with stress. It's my way of coping with the world. It's my way of staying calm. Through the most stressful times of my life, I've always found solace in my imaginary life. I mean, I was writing novels and my parents were divorcing and all kinds of hell was going on in our house. There'd be all this fighting and stuff being thrown, and I'd be lost in one of my novels that I was writing. So I've always found an escape there, even though now that it's work. I always think as I'm writing, well, this is the end. Right. This is the one where everyone realizes what a fraud I am. I know I am. They haven't seen it yet, but I am. But I'm happiest when I'm in the middle of a book and I've found my rhythm and it's really going well. Yeah. I'm unhappiest at the very beginning of a book when it just seems like I can't get started. I can't find that rhythm. And I always wish it's like that a book was like TV, that I could go right from finishing one book into another because I've got the momentum now. Yeah. In television, you write your first couple of scripts and the series is going and you've got all these deadlines and you're shooting and you get into a wonderful momentum that carries you along, and the scripts become easier to write as the season goes on because you've got that charge. And then when the season's over, you physically and mentally collapse. But
with writing a novel, every time you start, it's starting over from scratch.
Not entirely. I mean, I have found that I can write my Eve Ronin novels faster than others because I've now done, the 6th book just came out, but it's actually like the 8th, because I did crossovers of my Eve Ronin character with another series.
Right.
And when I'm in her world, I can write a book very fast. I wrote one of the Eve Ronins in, was it 8 weeks?
Wow.
8 weeks. Because I knew how she would react. If I knew the story and the situation, I could put her in it, and it's almost like I'm channeling her from another dimension.
Right.
It's harder. I have a book coming out in May called Murder by Design. It's a brand new standalone, first in a new series, if it's successful. And that was really hard because I was chipping away at a blank screen where I had to find the character's voice. And it took me weeks you were talking about voice, to find the voice I wanted to use.
Yeah.
I've been writing police procedurals. This was much more like Monk or Columbo, and it was first person from the assistant's point of view. I had to figure out who that person was, what that voice was, what tone I wanted to strike between humor and heart and procedural. And those are tough decisions to make, and it's hard to find the right recipe.
Right. What is Murder by Design about? I mean, I would love to.
Murder by Design, I've been doing police procedurals now for so long, I found myself missing Monk. I found myself missing Diagnosis Murder. I found myself missing the whodunit. So Murder by Design is my attempt at a Sherlock Holmes, Columbo, or Monk. It's about this guy, Edison Bixby, who's the best looking detective you've ever seen. He looks like Glenn Powell or one of those three Australian guys who are gorgeous and Hemsworth. Yeah. He's also extremely rich. He's an LAPD homicide detective who shows up at crime scenes with a Bugatti with a bubble light on top. Any woman he wants, he'll get. And he solves crimes using elements of design. He sees the world through the built world that's all around us, through the objects we use, the devices we use. His life is going great until he solves this impossible murder and exposes the killer. And the killer says, "You sanctimonious prick," and shoots him in the face. Wow. So now he's an insurance investigator, still gorgeous except for the big scar on his forehead, still rich, still brilliant, but can't filter his thoughts. So if he sees a woman with a great rack, he'll say, "Great rack." If he sees a woman with an enormous ass, he'll say, "You really don't want to eat that cookie." He can't control what goes through his head. He'll walk up to you and say, "You're the killer, and I'm going to prove it." So he has an assistant to try to control the wake of disaster he leaves behind him.
Right.
But his assistant, who's a struggling actor, suspects that Edison Bixby's neurological disorder is BS. Right. Sort of like Columbo, who says just one more thing, that he's using it as an excuse to keep people off balance. It's a mystery whether he's faking it or not. But so the book comes out in May, and it was a lot of fun to write, but also a lot of hard work.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Let's talk about Eve Ronin for a second, though. You just said that now that you've got the character, you basically just let her go. Mm-hmm. And the place you let her go is here in Calabasas.
Right here.
One thing I noticed when I was reading the latest Eve Ronin was the setting is almost a character. Calabasas, which is not a place I've spent a lot of time because, frankly, you guys are way up here. It's its own. It's not just a suburb. It's not just another chunk of Los Angeles. It is a unique and interesting place.
I've lived here 38 years. No, what am I saying? Our daughter was. I've lived here 30 years. I've been married 38, but I've been here 30 years, and it's taken me a while to understand this place. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a strange city. I don't want to say this in front of Dennis Washburn, for whom the city would not exist if he weren't here. But it's a city that isn't quite sure what it is. Mm-hmm. You enter the city from one direction, it's the Old West. Right. You enter from another direction, it's a fake Italian village. And it has this weird sort of personality disorder. It's wealthy with all these gated communities, even gated communities in gated communities, but it's also rural. It's like, make up your mind what you are. And it's genuine, but also extraordinarily fake. Mm-hmm. And you have all these celebrities who live here, but you also have some people who still think it's 1968 and, Haight-Ashbury's still alive and kicking. It's a very, in many ways, Calabasas and the Las Virgenes area in general, the jurisdiction of the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station, is a microcosm of California, right. Good and bad. Mm-hmm. You've got the beach, you've got the mountains, you've got the rich, the poor, you've got the rural, you've got the Hollywood.
Right.
You've got, Malibu Creek State Park is a former backlot and still used for filming. You got people, when we go to dinner afterward, you'll see there are paparazzi here waiting to see someone famous go have sushi. It's a strange place. And there are a lot of jurisdictional disputes around Calabasas. And when I decided I wanted to write a police procedural, so many of them have been written about Los Angeles, but none have been written about this area, the Las Virgenes, Malibu, Topanga, Calabasas area. And I realized there's so much here, so many different cultural and societal microcosms, and so many conflicts that I could write about this place forever and still be fresh.
Yeah.
And I find every time I write a new Eve Ronin novel, I find a different perspective on this place where I live. Plus, people are always emailing me stuff.
That's cool.
And I read our local paper, the Acorn. I read the Calabasas Enterprise. And I just keep an eye on what's happening here in our town and what the disputes are. And it's endless. I have so many stories I could tell about this place.
It's such a beautiful area, but like you say, it contains so many places, like Los Angeles itself. Los Angeles, I don't know if you've ever seen this map, but there's a map that shows how the next 9 large metropolitan areas in the United States can all fit in the area of Los Angeles. So when my relatives, back in Idaho, call me and say, "Oh my God, there's a fire," and I'm like, I would have to drive 2 hours to get to the fire.
But that's the other thing. Calabasas is this, special community that is always under threat. How many fires now have come up to our back fences in the last few years?
Yeah.
I fictionally wrote about this massive wildfire that was, the biggest wildfire in California history, and I talked about how it swept from Stevenson Ranch to the beach, and while I was writing that book, it happened. I was able to look at the galleys and look at the screen. Hey, I got it right. It's astonishing. So there's always this threat here. We built this city in a wildfire highway, a prehistoric wildfire highway. But even if you look in the past, before Dennis Washburn decided to make this a city, there's a lot of bloodshed here, a lot of Hollywood history here. A lot of Tarzan movies were shot back here. There were people hung down the street. It's been an interesting place. It has a great history and a great future, good and bad.
Yeah, it seems, and you do such an amazing job in your books, all of Los Angeles, but finding the parts that aren't on screen and finding the parts that people don't generally see and putting a new spotlight on.
Well, it's also terror, because what am I going to say that Michael Connelly and Raymond Chandler and Robert Crace and Joseph Wamba haven't said better?
Right.
I'm not going to describe Sunset Boulevard or Rodeo Drive or Musso and Frank's better than they did. But I can do Calabasas better.
Absolutely.
It's virgin territory.
You've also, you pointed out you've actually been very prescient. You wrote about the fires, and then they happened, and I'm sure someone will talk to you about that at some point. But
my wife is always saying to me, I'll pretend she's not here. She's always saying to me, your books keep coming true. You keep predicting the future.
Right.
Why don't you write a book where Oreo cookies help you lose weight? And a book where you win the lottery. Yeah. Let's see if that can happen.
That would be fantastic. And you wrote a book about home invasions, and
then I got nearly invaded. I'm not making this up. I wrote a book called Dreamtown about home invaders striking hidden hills in Calabasas, and the book was only a couple weeks before coming out, and we were sitting in my living room. It was just, I think it was September before school started, or August, and our daughter was over. She's a second grade teacher. She was showing us her classroom on the iPad, and we're looking at pictures of her classroom, and it dings to let us know there's some movement in the backyard. And we thought, oh, it's going to be a coyote or a bobcat. And I take a look, and it's 6 guys in balaclavas, whatever you call it, scrambling up the back of my hill. I went, shit. Then I dropped the iPad, and I grabbed the phone, and my wife went, what are you doing? I said, I'm calling the sheriff. And I called 911. I said, there are guys coming in our backyard. You got to send the cops over. And as I'm doing this, I'm walking across the house, and I'm going to the kitchen. I'm turning lights on in the backyard, and I start to open the back door. My wife says, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to tell them to get the hell out of our yard. Just, or what? You're going to write a threatening scene in your next book? Why don't you just open the door and say, my wife and daughter are here, come on in and rape them. I went, good point. And I closed the door. And but I posted the video of those guys clambering up my hillside.
Right.
And they must have seen me walking across our house and saw what a great figure of a man I was,
yes.
and were so terrified that they fled. I think they really just saw me calling the cops, but they fled. I posted the video online, and usually I have like 3 or 4 followers. Those videos went viral. All these TV stations started calling me, all these newspapers from around the country. I had TV crews coming to my house. My HOA wanted to give me a cease and desist order. I was just making my HOA look bad. I said, oh, it looks bad as they can get in here from the back wall. We really need to put cameras out. But it's just so weird. I wrote this book about home invasion robberies, and it happens to me.
Right.
And by the way, if you think I'm exaggerating, just Google Lee Goldberg, home invasion robbery, and you'll see the videos, you'll see the interviews, you'll see newspaper clippings. My relatives in France called us and said, you wouldn't believe we read Le Monde today about Lee.
But that brings up something else in your work, is that you write about the difference between reality and fiction, especially TV and reality, all the time, and how they overlap and one influences the other. And I'm really fascinated by that as well. I would like to know, how do you think TV and fiction has impacted our ideas? I'm really sorry, I just used
I think it's totally, the line between fact and fiction is totally obliterated now.
Right.
We're all on TV. We all have the ability to film something and put it out there for millions to see.
Yeah.
We're all TV networks now, and everybody's filming their sandwiches and their haircuts and their dental appointment. They go to have their UTI, they film the urine sample they're getting. Everyone's filming everything. And here in Calabasas with the Lost Hill Station, dealing with Malibu and all the celebrities and stuff, you have Mel Gibson, and I mean, you meet these cops who have selfies all over their cubicles. Even in the Hollywood Station with celebrities, and with TV shooting everywhere. I mean, I turned the Marriott in Woodland Hills here into Community General Hospital for diagnosis murder. I mean, I can't go anywhere in LA that hasn't been somewhere else. This entire city is a backlot now. They've destroyed the actual backlots and are just using our streets. So we're all used to seeing Marina Del Rey as Florida, or Marina Del Rey as Cuba, or Calabasas as all these other places. I mean, or Stevenson Ranch being shot as Calabasas. We are now all living in a movie studio. Mm-hmm. And it's impossible not to be affected by it.
Right.
I mean, my wife and I were having dinner here at the Commons, and the Kardashians were there, and all these, paparazzi were going by, and we watched the videos the next day. And my wife and I had been airbrushed out because I guess our asses weren't as nice. It's like, literally, you're like, what happened to us? We were standing right there. But it's all around us all the time, and police officers. I don't know if this story is true or not. I heard it from Stephen Bochco, and maybe he was embellishing, but he claims that cops didn't start wearing those badges on lanyards around their necks until they